If you're a man over 50, you've been through divorce, and you've discovered the calm that comes with living alone. This video is for you, because reason number 5 will hit closer to home than you'd like to admit. And once you hear it, you might realize why staying single feels more like freedom than... Have you noticed how many older men today are choosing to stay single? Maybe you're one of them, or maybe you know someone who is. It's a question that sparks heated debates on forums, endless threads on Reddit, and countless videos across YouTube. Why are so many men over 50 walking away from traditional relationships and choosing solitude instead? In this video, I'll break down 15 powerful reasons. And trust me, when we get to reason number 5, it may hit even closer than you expect. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear might explain not just other men's lives, but maybe even your own. Reason 1. For many older men, freedom is priceless. After decades of compromise, they rediscover the pure joy of making decisions without asking anyone for permission. Think about it. For years, from where to vacation, what to eat for dinner, required negotiation. One man shared online after his divorce. He packed his bag every weekend. No debates. No scheduled conflict. He simply left and went where his heart wanted. That's the essence of independence. It's like finally getting the keys back to your... After years of sitting in the passenger seat, suddenly, you control the... You choose the road. You decide the destination. This kind of autonomy brings a deep sense of relief. Men can focus on hobbies, gardening, motorcycles, the freedom to live at your own pace, without compromise. It isn't just enjoyable, it's healing. For many men over that freedom is more valuable than... It's not a rejection of companionship. It's simply an embrace of self. If you've ever felt the relief of choosing your own path. Reason 2. Emotional baggage and burnout. Divorce. The truth is, relationships take a toll. By the time men reach their 50s, many have endured failed marriages, betrayals, or years of conflict. These experiences leave scars that don't simply vanish. One man explained it bluntly. After 2 failed marriages, I don't have the energy to start over again. That statement resonates with thousands, because starting over means opening yourself up to vulnerability, arguments, and uncertainty all over again. It's not about bitterness. It's about protecting what's left of your emotional health. Think of it like a roller coaster. When you're young, the highs and lows feel thrilling. You want the adrenaline rush. But as you age, your stomach can't handle the same drops. You just want the ground beneath your feet to stay steady. That's what many men crave. They don't want to relive the cycle of falling in love, facing conflict, watching it collapse, and paying the emotional price. Instead, they want calm, peace, balance. For older men, solitude often feels safer than the uncertainty of a new romance. Emotional baggage doesn't just weigh on the heart. It shapes decisions. It pushes men toward peace over passion and stability over chaos. Reason 3. Money matters, especially after divorce. By the time men reach midlife, many have spent decades working hard, building savings, paying mortgages, investing for retirement. That effort creates a sense of security, but it also creates fear. Fear of losing it all. Fear of watching years of labor disappear in court papers. As one Reddit user said, "I've worked too hard to hand my future to another divorce lawyer." For many men, that single sentence captures the truth. Financial independence gives men freedom. They can spend money on hobbies, golf, fishing trips, motorbikes. They can travel, whether that means a solo backpacking trip across Europe or a quiet vacation in the mountains. They can focus on health, buying nutritious food, paying for gym memberships, and investing in wellness. It's not selfish. It's self-respect. Because money is not just about wealth. It's about control. Control over your life. Control over your choices. And after going through a divorce once, many men decide never to risk their financial. They'd rather invest in themselves, in peace, in experiences, than risk handing half away. For them, staying single means keeping what they've built. It means enjoying the fruits of their labor without fear of losing them. Reason 4. Dating isn't what it used to be. Swipe left. Swipe right. Casual hookups. Shifting gender roles. For men who grew up in a different era, the new rules of modern dating often feel like a foreign language. One older gentleman admitted, "I don't understand. I don't want meaningless hookups. I'm old-fashioned. And the whole thing feels alien to me." That sentiment is, imagine this. You've been playing suddenly, the world switches to a completely new game, with new pieces, new rules, and new strategies. You can try to learn it, but many men decide, why bother? Why spend energy adapting to a system that doesn't align with their values? For older men, relationships use today's dating culture, often focused on instant gratification, feels shallow. It's not that these men don't want, it's that the methods to achieve have changed so drastically that it no longer feels. So instead of forcing themselves into, many men, they choose solitude. They choose peace. Reason 5. The joy. This one strikes deep. Solitude is not, it is calm. It is clarity. It is control. Many men over 50, that life alone can be deeply fulfilling. One man shared, "I have my dog, my hobbies, and my peace. What more do I need?" It's easy for us, but the truth, their lives are often richer, more stable, and more joyful than ever before. Picture a Sunday morning. Fresh coffee. Birds outside the window. Silence. No arguments. No demands. Just stillness. For some, it's like comparing a calm lake to a stormy sea. When you've been tossed by storms before, you learn to appreciate the stillness. This joy of solitude is growing. It's about embracing one's. For many men, it's a privilege. Reason 6. Fear of getting hurt again. Pain leaves scars. And scars shape. Many older men have lived infidelity, broken promises. One man shared painfully, "My ex cheated on me. I can't imagine trusting again." That statement reveals a truth many men. It's not bitterness. It's self-preservation. It's protection. Think about touching a hot stove. You burn your hand once, and the memory stays. You don't keep touching them, hoping the outcome will be different. That's how heartbreak feels. The cost of opening themselves up, the risk of betrayal, feels heavier than the reward. As we age, the idea of another breakup, another betrayal, another collapse of trust becomes unbearable. So instead of risking more wounds, older men retreat to say they protect their hearts by keeping them guarded. For some, but for many, it feels like survival. It feels like wisdom. And it explains why, for countless older men, is not about fear of It's about refusing to be burned again. Reason 7. Enjoying relationships on their own. Being single doesn't mean being isolated, and it doesn't mean swearing off love forever. For many older men, it simply means Some still date. Some enjoy companionship. But they do it without the pressure. One man explained his arrangement. I see my companion a few times a week. We travel together. We laugh. We enjoy dinner, but we don't live together. We both value our independence. That balance works. It's companionship without contracts. It's intimacy without losing personal space. Think of it like renting a vacation home. You get to enjoy the scenery, the comfort, the good parts. But when the trip ends, you go back to your no long-term mortgage, no obligations. For many older men, it allows them to satisfy the human need for connection, while keeping the freedom they fought hard to reclaim. This new model of relationships is becoming more common. Not marriage, not cohabitation, but companionship on your own terms. Reason 8. Personal growth and self-discovery. Being single isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about creating after years of focusing on work, family, many older men finally get the chance to. One man picked up painting after his divorce. Another started traveling solo across. A third began writing the book he had dreamed of. These aren't selfish pursuits. They're acts of rediscovery. It's like finding an old box in the attic. Inside, you discover that you had forgotten. But now, you can finally open the box again. For many men over 50, staying single allows them to build stronger bodies, to work on mental clarity, to explore spirituality or creative endeavors. This stage of life becomes and more about becoming the best version of yourself. Growth requires space, and singlehood provides that space. Reason 9. Changing priority. As men age, their priorities naturally shift. When you're young, romance and but as the years pass, other values rise. Purpose, legacy, contribution. One retiree shared his story. Instead of chasing another, he spent his retirement mentoring young entrepreneurs. He described it as the most meaningful. Another man chose community work, volunteering, coaching local sports, building something bigger than himself. At this stage, fulfillment doesn't always come from it comes from creating, it comes from leaving something behind. Think of it like climbing a mountain. At the bottom, but near the summit, you start thinking about the view, the legacy, and what you'll leave for others. For many older men, not because they don't matter, but because new passions, new priorities take their. Reason 10. Health concern. As men get older, health becomes a central priority. For some, being strict diets, exercise regimens, daily habits that support recovery. One man on a forum shared, after suffering a heart attack, he cut out junk food. He began walking every morning. He joined a gym for the first time in years. And he admitted, these changes would have been much harder if he had to constantly adjust to being single gave him control over his kitchen, control over his schedule, control over the pace of his life. It's like steering a ship alone. You set the course. You adjust the sails. You decide when to rest and when to push forward. For many men, It allows them to protect both, and as the years go by, well-being becomes priceless. Reason 11. Avoiding pressure. Society often hands us a checklist. Get married. Buy a house. Raise children. Retire. But many older men have already checked those boxes. They've done the marriage. They've raised the kids. They've built the house. And now, they simply don't want to repeat the cycle. One man said it plain, "I've already done it all. Now, I just want to live my life without pressure." For these men, staying single means freedom. Freedom from external expectations. Freedom from constant judgment. It's like stepping off a racetrack. For years, you were for marriage, kids, career, mortgage. But once you step off, you realize you don't need to run anymore. You can walk, or even just sit in the stands and enjoy life at your own pace. That sense of relief is why so many men reject the reason 12. Relationships can bring love and joy, but they can also bring stress, arguments, compromises, silent tension, unmet expectations. For men who have spent years in the contrast of being single feels profound. One man in his late 50s described it this way: "For the first time in years, my life feels calm, drama-free, peaceful. Peace of mind it's the kind of treasure you don't until you finally have it." Think of it like noise versus silence. When you live in constant noise, you forget what silence even sounds. But once you taste silence, you never want to go back. Many older men they've discovered that solitude, it's serenity, it's stability. And when you're protecting your mental health, sometimes the best relationship is no relationship at all. Reason 13. Comfort with the familiar. As men age, comfort becomes a form of wealth. Many older men have lived alone for years, building routines. Their home feels like their daily rhythm feels predictable. One man explained, "After a decade of living alone, I've built my life exactly how I want it. Adding someone else to the mix feels more like a disruption than a blessing." That mindset might sound stubborn, but think of it like wearing a pair. They fit your feet just right. They carry your weight comfortably. Why would you replace them just to start breaking in a new pair all over? For these men, the familiar, it's secure, it's comforting, it's theirs. Compromising with someone else's habits, different sleep schedules, diets, or house feels exhausting compared. In the end, they can remain in control of their environment, and that control brings peace. Reason 14. Lack of desire to raise another family. Parenting is one of life's greatest responsibilities, but it's also one of the most exhausting. By the time men reach many have already raised children. They've stayed up through sleepless nights. They've gone to soccer games, parent-teacher meetings. They've given years of energy. And now, they want rest. One man admitted, "I love my kids, but I have no desire to start over. I don't want to raise another family." And who can blame him? At this stage of life, Men value freedom, peace. The thought of entering a new relationship with stepchildren or the ex feels overwhelming. It's like finishing a marathon, then being asked to run it all over again. Most men would rather sit, breathe. That's why it allows them to rest, reach, and enjoy life without stepping into another. Reason 15. Social stigma is fading. Decades ago, being a single older man carried a stigma. People whispered, families pressured, society judged. But today, that stigma is fading. It's no longer unusual to see men in their 50s choosing independence. It's no longer strange to traveling without a partner at their side. One man put it this way: in my 20s and 30s, I felt constant pressure from family to marry. Now nobody cares. They respect my choices. This cultural shift is because when stigma disappears, freedom grows. It's like stepping out of a tight. Suddenly, you can move freely. You can breathe. You can live life. For many older men, it's about empowerment. It's about consciously choosing and society is finally learning to respect that choice. So, why are older men staying single? It's not fear. It's not bitterness. It's choice. A choice for freedom, for peace, for health, for growth. And if you're an older man thinking about this path, know this: you are not alone. In fact, you might be happier than you ever thought possible. If this resonated with you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Give the video a like so more men like you can find it. And don't forget to subscribe, because we have so much more to share. Stay strong, stay happy, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.